And could be evaluated by Frank Brochin, The Meaning of Destiny, Edwin Tang.
Toastmasters, welcome guests. Good evening once again. When I was growing up, there was a person who became somewhat of a mythical figure to me. I called him the blind prophet. He was blind. He was a Chinese fortune teller in Hong Kong, whom my grandmother had gone to throughout her lifetime to seek her fortune, to ask about different things in her life. And what he had predicted for her was accurate right down to the T. He had predicted when she would get married, when she came to America, how many children she had. Everything she had approached him for, he had predicted to a T, and this is true. There's a saying in Chinese that goes, when a gift is given to someone, something else is taken away. And the gift that this prophet had was the gift of seeing into the future. And he had paid the price by being born blind. So my grandmother always told me, fortune tellers that are blind are most likely to be true. Those can be trusted more. My mother, on the other hand, she was a very rational person, not superstitious, but even she secretly admitted, and never in front of me, but I knew that she acknowledged that what he had predicted for her life had come true as well, everything. So throughout my childhood, growing up with my mom and my grandmother, I would always ask them, tell me more about the blind prophet. What did he say about this and that? And they would tell me stories. But whenever I asked them about what he had predicted for my life, they would always brush it aside. They would dismiss it. They wouldn't want to tell me. But once in a while, some small piece of information would leak out about my life. So over the years, I would piece together all these little bits and pieces that they leaked out, and I got a general picture of my life. And what the blind prophet had predicted for me was I would start life with a bang, on a very high note, and also end on a very high note. But in the middle, there were some tough times of challenges and difficulty. I was only a child, so I didn't really think much of it. 20 years later, I run into another fortune teller, Master Wong. I'd met him through a friend of a friend of a friend of a colleague of my mother when she was shopping for real estate for her office. I approached him because I was curious, and I asked him if he would tell me my fortune. Master Wong was not blind. He had eyes. He was also very scholarly, and he knew his stuff. He studied much about fortune telling and feng shui. And I asked him if he would tell my fortune, and he said, okay. So I sat down with him. He read my palm. He read my face. I gave him my birth information, hour, time, location, month, etc., all that stuff. And he looked at me and said, you're very lucky. You were born into a very good family. You have a great childhood, great upbringing. And your life also ends on a great note. Great abundance, fame even. I was like, oh wow. But in your late 20s to early 30s, there are some times of suffering. Now when I heard this, it just kind of resonated. An alarm went off in my head. I've heard this before. I didn't think much of it, but I started to feel a little nervous. They both said kind of the same thing. I would have some times of suffering, times of challenge and difficulty from my late 20s into my 30s. So I asked myself, this can't be it. I can't be just confined to this fate. There must be something I can do. So I was searching. For another answer. And I was searching on the internet one day, and I came across a website called ChineseFortuneCalendar.com. And there you could enter your birth information, the location of the city you were born, the longitude, hour, gender, all that stuff, and it would give you a synopsis of your life. What really shocked me was it created a chart called the rise and fall chart of your life, organized by decade cycles, 10 years at a time. And I read my chart. From 0 to 8 years old, it was very high. From 8 to 18, it drops a little bit, but it's still very strong. 18 to 28, it drops some more. And then from 28 to 38, it was low, very low, almost nothing. And then it slowly climbs back up. And when I saw that on the computer screen, I was just, couldn't believe it. And then I checked my brother's fortune, the rise and fall chart from my brother. It was high across the board. And I thought, this is not fair. But then I thought to myself, 3 different sources, all pointing to a similar conclusion. And I just still, I kept asking myself, is there something I can do about this? Am I just confined to this fate? So I read a bunch of books. I was searching. I read some self-help books, books on motivation, and through those books I set some goals for myself. I created a vision for my life. But one person in particular, Anthony Robbins, who many of you might have heard of, he had one quote which stuck to me. Life has no meaning other than the meaning you give it. I think that quote stuck to me because it gave me a sense of power. It gave me a sense that I had free will over my fate. So anyway, last year I was 27, and I remember dreading my birthday. It was in December, and it kept coming closer. Oh no, my birthday, 28, it's coming closer, with times of suffering, difficulty. And I remember the morning of my 28th birthday, I was in bed, I was like, I was expecting the ceiling to fall down or something. But nothing happened. It was a normal day. The week went by, pretty ordinary. It was December, the holiday season came, it was fun, and nothing happened. So I was like, whew, maybe it was all in my mind. And then the first week in January, on a Thursday afternoon, my boss at work calls me into the conference room, and he says, Edwin, a couple things. I gotta lay you off. Second thing is, can you help me on this project here, finish up? I got laid off. Getting laid off is shocking enough, but for me this had another meaning. The obvious meaning was that the times of difficulty are here, that 28 to 38 decade cycle, times of suffering have arrived now. And I remember going back and sitting at my desk, just sitting down there for 10 minutes. And I was physically shaking. I just didn't know what to think. And then I asked myself, what does this mean? Well, the obvious meaning was the times of suffering have arrived. And then I asked myself, what could this mean? And then, in my mind, that quote came again from Anthony Robbins. Life has no meaning other than the meaning you give it. So I asked myself, what could this mean? Well, in the past 5 years, the few jobs I've had, I've never really felt that I was living to my true potential. And I knew this. I wasn't really happy. So I thought, maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe this is a call to break out of payroll prison, come out on my own, take my chances. And then I decided, why do these have to be the worst years of my life? Why can't they be the best years of my life? And then I said, you know what? These 10 years are going to be the best years of my life. How about that? So since January, I've been self-employed. It's March, end of March now, almost 3 months. And I have to say, life has been difficult, financially, mentally, in every way. I've been pushed to my limits every single day, making mistakes. However, in these past 3 months, I have learned more about work, life, people, myself, than I have in the past 3 years. And I do a checkup on myself regularly. I always ask myself, how am I doing? How am I doing? And the answer so far has been consistently, I feel alive. I feel like I'm living life every day, and I feel challenged. I feel like I'm expanding and growing constantly. And the funny thing is, I'm having fun. I mean, the stakes are high, but what I've been getting has been high. And I just think, if these are the worst times of my life, then bring it on. And in retrospect, what the blind prophet, what Master Wong, what that rise and fall chart from that website was pointing to, it had come true in a way. Life did get tougher, harder, more challenging. But I decided to be smarter, stronger, and more confident in how I approach life. Because I realized one thing. I might not be able to control everything that happens in my life, but I can decide what it means. Mr. Toastmaster.